Good morning. Let's talk about Jesus. I grew up in a Christian society and I went to Catholic school, and I feel that the gospel that was passed down to me was very disempowering. The gospel, translation of that being the good word. And it took many years of doing inner work, studying different religions, and listening to spiritual teachers. One of them is Alan Watts. It's one of my favorites, and I'll be paraphrasing him a lot in this talk. And I'll put a link in the description of one of my favorite talks about religion that he has on YouTube. Anyway, what is the good news? Because typically the way that the gospel is passed down, it's institutionalized guilt. And I don't see how that is the good word, the good news. And how do you know if you have a naive view of God? One of the questions that I like to ask is, what are the true teachings of Jesus Christ? And a lot of people will say, well, they'll usually ball up and say something like, love your neighbor, love, I don't know. And one of my favorite quotes from Alan Watts is, when I hear all these hippies talk about love, you know what I do? I go buy a gun because I know there's a ruckus stirring. So another way that we could ask this question is, why did they kill Jesus? Because obviously that would be the true teachings of Jesus Christ, because whatever they killed him for had to be so controversial that they had to put him to death. And this becomes apparent in John 10:30, where Jesus says, I and the Father are one. Add more context to it. Jesus was with his disciples, and there was some Jews around him that weren't his immediate disciples, and Jesus says, I and the Father are one. And the Jews took up their stones to stone him, and Jesus said, many good works I've shown you from the Father. For which of these do you stone me? And they said, for not a good work we stone you, but you being man maketh yourself God. And Jesus replied, isn't it written in your law that I said ye too are gods? This is the 82nd Psalm. And that's it. That's the good word wrapped up in a nutshell. This teaching requires a divine or mystical experience. If we think about it, we see Jesus as an infant in the Bible, and then he pops back up on the scene in his late, early 30s. And where did Jesus go within this time? Well, it's said that a lot of yogis were great travelers. So it's not impossible for him to have traveled, because he was in the area, to travel to different places that were influenced by Buddhism or Hinduism, and he had a mystical experience. He woke up, and so he came back to tell the good news to the Jews of the area, but he could only use the words that he had available to him. So he says, I woke up, I realized I and the Father are one. And this is actually in the Bible. Well, if you read the Bible and it says the Son of God, the will typically be italicized. In some Bibles it's not, and even in older Bibles it will say a Son of God. So this is what I mean, that the church has covered this up. This is where they said, okay, Jesus can have this divine revelation, but not you. No, definitely not you. So this is disempowering. There's no personal divine revelation or mystical experience, and this is why Alan Watts calls it the unemasculated gospel. And what they did is said, okay, well, this is it. Jesus is the only one, and they pedestalized Jesus, and we don't really hear about him much after that. And this what we're talking about, the real gospel, that when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, the light, the only way to the Father is through me, the divine that's within all of us, that's the dynamite. That's the real gospel. And once you have this revelation, everything makes a lot more sense. When I had this experience and I came back and I read the Bible again, wow. I had realizations that I'd never had before in my entire life. And that was the good news. But a lot of people make images of God. This is one of the 10 Commandments. It says, thou shalt not make a graven image of me. That doesn't mean make a statue of God. Who's going to make a statue of God, I mean, that as well, though. But what this really meant deep down was, thou shalt not make a graven image of me in your head. And that's what many people do nowadays. They think that they have it all figured out, and it gets in the way of the reality. In Catholicism, one of the highest practices for a while was called the Gnostic practice, which was when you no longer needed an image of God because it gets in the way of the reality. But you can see why this would be pushed away, out of the way, because it's very anti-materialist and it doesn't make you reliant on the church. A church should be like a doctor. You go to the doctor to get your medicine to become cured, and you don't need to go back to the doctor anymore because you've been cured. And this is the same thing with religion. When you have a spiritual problem and you're spiritually sick, you should be able to go and get the good word and become cured. And you don't need the church anymore. But that's not the way that it works right now. Is they have you addicted and they want you coming back. This is also apparent in Job. I don't know if you know the story of Job, but the devil came to God and says, hey, Job is one of your most holiest men. I bet I can get him to turn on you. And God says, bet. And the devil burns down his house, makes his animals run away, kills his family, makes him break out in all these sores, and his friends all come around to mourn with him, and they try to come up with some kinds of reasoning for why this was all happening. And God shows up on the scene, and he says, who speaketh without knowledge? Who obscures my plans of work without knowledge? And God says all of these just paragraphs of different conundrums, or he says, why do I cast rain upon the desert where no man is? Why? Obviously, God is so far beyond our intellectual mind. The Spirit giveth life, and the letter kills. That's why in Buddhism, they say, kill the Buddha. This would be sacrilegious. In Christianity, if you'd say, kill Jesus or kill God, oh gosh, don't say that. But in Buddhism, they say, kill the Buddha. A lot of people have a wrong idea of Buddhism. They think of it as a monotheistic religion where you worship this deity. But Buddhism and Hinduism are more of a experience. So when they say kill the Buddha, kill whatever idea that you have of the way that it is, because reality is far beyond your intellectual thinking mind. So to go back, thou shalt not make a graven image of me. Who speaketh without knowledge? Why do I cast rain upon the desert where no man is? This kind of understanding takes stillness and patience. It can't be spelled out in a book. It doesn't work like that. This is a revelation, an experience that you have. And when you do this type of work, you find oneness. You find that I and the Father are one. You find oneness with the internal energy of the universe that moves the sun and other stars.